The arrest of Nicolas Maduro, who is now being charged with narco-terrorism, is creating ripples throughout South and Central America and the world. Here for what it means to Venezuela and the world is Congressman Carlos Giménez of Florida. And to help us make sense of the role China might be playing in all of this, we're joined by China expert Gordon Chang. Gentlemen, Happy New Year to you both. Congressman, you were briefed on this operation as a member of the House Armed Services Committee. What was the legal and strategic justification for this effort? And Democrats are saying Congress should have been consulted.
Well, Democrats are saying that have absolutely no idea what the law says. And so the legal justification was that, Nicolas Maduro was a fugitive from American justice. The Biden administration had put a $25 million bounty on his capture. We had doubled that to $50 million. He is the head of a narco-terrorist state. He is the head of a cartel that has been responsible for the deaths of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Americans, in addition to other illicit activities that are in his charging documents. And so the legal basis was that we went in to arrested Nicolas Maduro and brought him back to American justice.
Congressman, breaking today, the Senate just advanced a war powers resolution that would block any further military action in Venezuela without congressional approval. Do you support that? I know 5 Republicans in the Senate joined Democrats in advancing that War Powers Act.
Yeah, I don't support it. And I'm actually disappointed that some of my Republican colleagues on the other side on the other side of Congress supported it. The president, this was not a military action. They needed the military in order to carry out a law enforcement action, because it would have been very difficult for a number of FBI agents to go down to Venezuela and actually arrest Nicolas Maduro. The military was just there to make sure that they were safe and capture Nicolas Maduro and, again, bring him to American justice. It's very similar to what happened with Noriega in Panama, a number of years ago. He had charges brought up against him, and the United States went in, arrested him, and brought him back to the United States to face American justice. The same thing is going to happen to Nicolas Maduro. It is unnecessary. It's actually, I don't even know if it has any teeth, to be honest with you, because this is not an act of war. All right, the military is there to help us arrest people that are under indictment by the United States. There are still a number of Venezuelans in Venezuela, part of that regime, that are there, that are under indictment and have bounties on their heads. So I'm not sure that this particular action resolution by the Senate will have any effect or deter the president from taking the actions that he has to take in order to arrest these folks that are under indictment here in the United States.
Gordon, from a strategic standpoint, does the Senate resolution broadcast weakness to Beijing, to Moscow, that America's legislative branch might pull the plug as they move ahead here?
It signals that the American political system is divided, but it also signals strength in the sense that President Trump is just going to ignore it. Previous presidents have ignored resolutions from Congress on war powers. And it just shows that the United States, where it counts, is able to exert its will through the use of force. And President Trump will continue to do that. So ultimately, it's a symbol of strength.
Mm-hmm. Gordon, I want to ask you about the strategic importance of this capture of Maduro, what this does regionally. I know China has been very invested here. 80% of Venezuela's oil goes to China. Tell me what this indicates on the Chinese front. What was dislocated through this action?
Well, actually, the thing that was dislocated and the most important is China's image. You go back last week, people were saying China's a superpower. Many people were saying, oh, China was the dominant power in the world. And, the Chinese were pushing Trump around on trade. And to a certain extent, it looked that way. But what we saw on Saturday night was President Trump using American power to enforce American laws, as Representative Giménez just said. But also it showed that the Chinese were toothless, because they couldn't do anything to protect their number one client in Latin America, their beachhead, a country that they had put so much money into, not only in terms of investments, but loans. And now we are seeing other leaders in Latin America who don't like us, like Colombia's Petrov. He doesn't like us, but he is now talking to President Trump in tones that are pleasing, largely because he sees that there's no point in trying to resist the United States. The United States is the dominant power in the Western Hemisphere, and even people who hate us now realize it and are working with us.
Congressman, your district is home to thousands of Venezuelans who fled the Maduro regime. What are you hearing from them tonight?
They're joyful. They are super appreciative of President Trump and the actions that he took. And so that's what I'm hearing. Now, what they want is a peaceful transition to a free and democratic Venezuela, which is also what is in the best interest of the United States, by the way. If we really want U.S. Companies, et cetera, to invest in Venezuela, to be safe in Venezuela, they can't deal with this regime. This regime is a narco-terrorist regime. It's just a holdover until we get to what we really need and what the Venezuelan people actually deserve, which is a free and democratic Venezuela. There is a government, a legitimate government waiting to take over. I'm not sure if that's the government that's going to finally be in place when it is a democracy, but that's what we're all hoping for. That's what we really want. And I'm sure that the United States understands that's what we got to get to.
Gordon, I know China has significant investment in Venezuela. They hold so much debt from the Venezuelans. What is the message here for them? How does Beijing read this action? And has this dislocated them in this sphere of influence in this hemisphere?
Well, it certainly has shaken confidence in China because although it talked very tough beforehand, talking about how it was going to defend the regime, it hasn't defended the regime. And people in the region can see that. The problem for China is that it's not just Venezuela, it's also Iran. China takes more than 90% of Iran's oil. The Iranian regime is being shaken. So China is now scrambling for secure supplies of oil. And that is going to be, I think, something that's going to dominate Chinese thinking. They right now have suffered one setback after another because of President Trump, starting in May of last year with Trump's triumphal tour through the 3 Gulf states. I think the Chinese are really worried about the way this world is going because they can see that neither them nor their Russian friends are able to challenge President Trump when it matters. Remember, Raymond, we seized those 2 ships, one of them a Russian ship that Russia really, really got upset about, but couldn't do anything about.
Yeah, Congressman, I know you serve on a select committee about the competition between U.S. and China. Give me a sense of the intelligence assets that were there in Venezuela or that perhaps are still there. It's obvious Chinese technology as well as Iranian technology, drones, et cetera, the Cubans' support, that did nothing to stop Maduro's capture here.
Absolutely. And so this was a show of force. It was a textbook operation, incredibly calculated and also incredibly, performed. And so, and again, as the professor was saying, China could do nothing about it. Look, the Chinese are all over our hemisphere. They are. And we needed to do something to stop them. Yes, we arrested a narco-terrorist, somebody that was aligned with China, aligned with Iran, Cuba, Russia, North Korea. All of our major adversaries are in Venezuela, but all of our major adversaries are also in other places like Nicaragua and basically Cuba too. And so I think with this one stroke, President Trump sent an unbelievable message, not only in our hemisphere, and rightly so, because we have been ignoring our hemisphere for far too long, but around the world. Look what's happening in Iran right now, where you have demonstrations, and the president has said, "Hey, to the Ayatollah, you better not touch your people, because if you do, we're going to do something about it." And then there's reports that he's been looking for property in Moscow. And so, yeah, it sends an unbelievable message. And look, if Iran somehow falls, the people of Iran can somehow change that regime, that will be earth-shattering. And it will also be really bad for the Chinese and the Russians and all of our adversaries, and good for America, because this is really an America first agenda. And every once in a while, we have to flex our muscles. And every once in a while we bark, we actually have to bite. And in this case, the president barked and he bit.
Yeah, the question is, where do you go now? I'll ask both of you this. I mean, the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, she's still in the country. Doesn't look like Trump wants her to succeed Maduro. Does the administration have a plan to ensure that this doesn't descend into chaos or worse, a second wave sequel dictatorship?
Well, I mean, look, I have spoken to the Secretary of State about this. There is a plan, and it has to be these are waters that we have to tread carefully. There is a stabilization. That's why we're dealing with the current regime. There is recovery. This is the economic recovery for Venezuela, where America holds all the cards, and then there's reconciliation, where they free political prisoners. Which, by the way, the brother of Delcy Rodriguez just announced that they were freeing the political prisoners. There has to be The opposition has to come back into Venezuela. There has to be a security guarantees for this, and then a transition to a democracy. And I believe I have a different opinion than President Trump. I know Maria Corina Machado. She is very well respected by the Venezuelan people. All the people in Miami will support her. All the people in Venezuela support her because they already have overwhelmingly in an election that was held about a year and a half ago. She's an extraordinarily brave individual, bright individual, pro-American, and I have no doubt that if an election were held today, Maria Corina Machado would be the president of Venezuela, and she would be pro-American. And so I have a different assessment of that. I don't know why the president has his assessment of her. I don't think he's met her and maybe listening to the wrong people.
Gordon, we've seen how regime change can go wrong. Iraq and Libya come to mind. What are the particular dangers in Venezuela, given the presence of Cuban intelligence and Russian mercenaries and this Chinese infrastructure that remains there, I imagine?
Chinese, Russian, and Iranian agents are going to try to destabilize the situation. This is different from Iraq because in Iraq, we had an attempt to change the government, to purge it of Ba'athist. This time, President Trump is keeping the regime in place. So this is not regime change. But as Representative Giménez said, and he's absolutely 100% correct on this, for there to be a stable government in Venezuela, it's got to be democratically elected. And there's got to be those elections. And I am sure that Machado is going to win. So this is going to be something where the Trump administration, I think, is going to have to adjust its position. And I think that they will. Right now, they're just dealing with a very fluid situation right now, and they're going to have to stabilize it. And once they stabilize it, there will be a room for elections, and those elections will lead to a democratically elected government. That's going to be great.
Congressman, talk to me about the oil for a moment. I know we're sort of blocking exports to particular enemy states, if you will, Russia or Iran rather. What is the role of these oil companies in rebuilding the Venezuelan infrastructure and I guess ensuring freedom for the people there?
Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to have a free and democratic Venezuela in order for the United States oil companies to actually be assured that their investments are going to be protected. And so that's the reason for America why we need a free and democratic Venezuela. But here's what's going on with the oil. Venezuelan oil was sanctioned, and so the way that they were selling their oil was in the black market, at way below market price, and so they weren't getting the full benefit of their oil. Now that we are capturing it and we are using it, we're actually going to be selling that oil at market prices, and so actually Venezuela is going to make out well with this. But it's not going to go to the regime; it's going to go to the rebuilding of Venezuelan infrastructure. And like I said, there is a plan. The plan is, you have to have stability, which is right now the phase we're in right now. There is recovery, which the oil is going to be a big part of that. And there's got to be reconciliation, which will lead to a free and democratic Venezuela. And I'm going to push back on this idea that somehow, this is like Iraq and some other places. Iraq is a nation there's three distinct ethnic groups that we try to jam together into one nation. That's not going to work. Venezuela is homogenous, okay? We have the same religion, et cetera, the same values or Western values, and they've been a democracy for a long time. It was only after these thugs and criminals took over that it became a dictatorship. They're yearning for democracy, and so that's what we need to have, and it'll be good. It's the best thing that could happen for the United States, for American companies, and frankly, for the Venezuelan people.
Gordon, I'll give you the last word here. It seems the big loser here, in addition to Maduro, is China. this is the beginning of the end of their influence, at least in the region. Is that overblown, or do you think that's a reality?
It's certainly a reality. Their image as a superpower was punctured. Their image of their military prowess with their equipment. I mean, they were embarrassed that their radars didn't see an armada of 150 American planes. They're going to lose their investments. They're going to lose their loans in Venezuela. They're going to be helpless. And I don't think Xi Jinping is in a position to challenge the United States. The other big loser, Raymond, is Cuba, because Venezuela was supporting the Cuban regime. So this could be a twofer, and that would be fantastic for the region and for the United States and for the Cuban people and for the Venezuelan people, everybody.
Yeah, what a moment. What a week. We'll leave it there for now, and this story is far from over. We'll keep continuing bringing updates as it happens. Congressman Carlos Giménez, Gordon Chang, thank you both for being here.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks, guys.